In Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, you're given 6 days to create your own model pizzeria. And like any model business owner, we only have one goal in mind: provide an adequate service for many to enjoy, make as much money as possible. Within these 6 days, I wanted to figure out just how far I could push this whole pizzeria business, and truly see how much money I could obtain in a single playthrough of FNAF 6, with the end goal of hopefully becoming a millionaire before we burn up in our inevitable fate. This challenge not only requires immense skill in every part of this game, but also a ton of patience and a lot of planning and routing. With that said, let's get into the rules of this challenge, and there's really only one. We have to finish the game with as much money as possible saved up, and hopefully we can reach that coveted millionaire status. I knew going into this challenge that I had to start saving as much money as possible from the very start, and that this would be a very long trial and error process until I truly had the best possible route figured out. And the routing for this game starts early, and by early I literally mean before you even open the game. When FNAF 6 was first released, it was meant to be a surprise that it was actually an official FNAF game. So when first booting up the game, you were met with a simple 8-bit minigame where you were feeding children some pizza. This would then transition into a demo salvage sequence where the official game would then start. Typically, you're given $100 in starting cash on the first day, but that won't get us very far. Luckily, if you design your pizza to have the bottom 4 options on it, which honestly creates the most disgusting sounding pizza ever. Like, you leave out the best 2 toppings and then put olives on it, bro. What child is going to eat this? Regardless, if you design your pizza in this specific way, then play the minigame and baby intro sequence, you'll be awarded an extra $100 in addition to your normal starting cash. Though, a problem with this strategy is that even when creating a new game, you still won't be met with this screen. It's only meant to trigger when you boot up the game for the very first time. So every time that we want to restart this challenge, we'll actually have to go into the save file for the game and change this first variable from a 1 to a 0, which will then start us on this screen instead of the normal title screen. Then play the entire minigame sequence again and listen to Henry's entire intro tape, and we can finally start the game. We did all of that for just $100 extra. And trust me, the penny pinching is not going to stop here. Now that we're in the simulator mode, we can actually choose what to buy and do. Throughout the entire game, there are 3 main sources of money making. The first of which is the conventional revenue that your pizzeria pulls in. We'll get more into the specifics for this stuff during the end of the night section. But all that you need to know for now is that the higher these numbers are here, the more money that we'll pull in at the end of the night. The second source of money making is the salvage sections. At the end of each night in the office, you're given the option to salvage one of the 4 animatronics that appear during the night sections. Again, we'll go more into these in detail once we reach them in the playthrough, but it's very important that we salvage every single animatronic. The amount of revenue that you get from salvages is typically a large percentage, if not entirely more than the revenue that your pizzeria pulls in for that day. The trade-off is that you have to fend them off in the office sections, but in our case, we don't really have a choice. However, these 2 sources of income pale in comparison to our last form of money making, and that is Faz rating and minigames. Though the logic of these minigames doesn't really make too much sense, as you're literally buying an arcade game, then somehow getting more money out of that same arcade game, but whatever, we take what we can get. Minigames are by far the largest variable in the playthrough for money making. Essentially, whenever you place an attraction or animatronic down for the first time, add any buyables for an attraction, or play minigames, your Faz rating will increase. Every time your Faz rating increases by 1,000, you'll be awarded with a $100 performance bonus. However, you can't just constantly play minigames until you've become a millionaire. You're only given 10 Faz tokens to play per night, giving us a total of 60 tries at minigames before we've earned as much money as we possibly can for the playthrough. Remember that number because it will become very important later on. Now that we know how to generally make money in FNAF 6, let's get into exactly how we can play Monday as efficiently as possible. Throughout the last minute or so, I've explained the various sources of money making that are present throughout the entire game. However, there's an additional one-time source of income that is one of the most important in the entire game, and that is the achievement bonuses. There are 4 achievements total in the game, which are obtained by collecting and placing down each major set of animatronics present in each of the main catalogs. These award a ridiculous amount of money, with the Trash in the Gang achievement awarding $1,000, the Mediocre Melodies achievement awarding $10,000, and the Rockstars Assemble awarding $20,000. Unfortunately, the last achievement, Posh Pizzeria, doesn't reward any cash, but with how much the animatronics for that achievement cost, I'm more than okay with avoiding it. Our route for Monday is essentially going to be rushing the Trash in the Gang and Mediocre Melodies achievements so we can set up our best money-making attractions for the remainder of the game. To start, we have our first $200 from the intro and bonus. With these $200, buy the small show stage, then every single Trash in the Gang animatronic. Now place all of them down one after another to get their initial Faz rating bonuses. Now accept the sponsorship for the Funtime Pop Soda for an additional $250. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but we're obviously going to be accepting every single ad, making the night sections even harder. But again, we don't really have a choice here because they will give us more money. At this point, you should have $470 total. In order to unlock each of the additional sections in the catalog menu, we'll have to spend a certain amount of total cash. This is why we purchased all of the Trash in the Gang animatronics, even though we only have enough space to place one of them down. Once we've bought all of the Trash in the Gang, we can purchase the colorful cups and plates to push us over $100 spent in total. Unlocking the Stan's Budget Tech catalog. It's here that we find our first mini-games, and seeing as we still have 10 Faz tokens for the night, we're going to want to find the most efficient way possible to use them. In Stan's Budget Tech, we have 3 arcade cabinets to choose from: Fruity Maze, Midnight Motorist, and Candy Cadet. In a perfect world, Candy Cadet would be the best option. His minigame is as simple as it gets. He just rolls a random number between 1 and 8, then multiplies that value by 250 to calculate the total Faz rating that you get from that minigame. However, he has a 1% chance to tell one of his lore stories, which award an additional 5,000 Faz rating. Getting this 1% chance would be huge, but I'm not about to go through all that intro cutscene and set up 99 out of 100 times just to get that one bonus. So for consistency, we have to choose between Fruity Maze and Midnight Motorist. Fruity Maze is significantly harder, and it doesn't provide any advantages in Faz rating, so we're going to go with Midnight Motorist. Midnight Motorist is fairly simple. Once your car has reached a speed of 150 miles per hour, your score will begin to increase. If you ever hit a car, you'll be forced to speed back up in order to continue to gain score.
What the f***, dude?
I found the best place to stay is right between the 2 roads, probably slamming directly into the guardrail. As it gives you the most direct movement options. If you manage to not hit any cars throughout the entire minigame, you can get a perfect score of 2,774, usually rewarding $100 to $200. We'll have to play Midnight Motorist 3 times in order to get our next minigame upgrade. If you get hit, don't panic. Unlike some other minigames that we'll get to later on, Midnight Motorist isn't very punishing when you get hit, with you only losing about 100 score or so. Once you've spent 3 tokens on Midnight Motorist, you should have enough money to unlock the next catalog. We're going to do this in a similar fashion to how we unlocked Stan's Budget Tech, by buying the small stage and some animatronics that we're going to place down, though you should be careful with who specifically you buy. I've added a total spent counter here for reference. In order to unlock Smiles and Servos Inc., you have to spend a total of $1,000. So purchase the sturdy stage for 1 animatronic, then buy Mr. Hippo, Ned Bear, and Pig Patch, which pushes us just over 1K. Even though she's required for the achievement, we don't want to buy Happy Frog yet, as we'd be overpaying to unlock Smiles and Servos. Now, place down the 3 animatronics that we just purchased. If you've done everything right up to this point, you should now have $590, which will be enough to buy our next minigame that we'll be using for the remainder of the night. And that minigame is Fruit Punch Clown. Oh man, Fruit Punch Clown. I'm gonna come right out and say it. I'm sorry to all you Spiff fans, but I hate this minigame. Maybe it's because I've been brain rotted beyond belief by playing stuff like UCN Deluxe all day. But playing Fruit Punch Clown for this challenge has been one of my worst gaming experiences probably ever. If you don't know the horrors of Fruit Punch Clown, let me cue you in. You control the aptly named Fruit Punch Clown, which has a scare radius that's displayed by this circle here. Now, there are 9 children that you have to scare total, with each child rewarding 200 points if you catch them in your radius. However, if you're able to scare all 9 children, you'll get the perfect bonus of 10,000 points, equating to a full $1,000 in cold hard cash. Nothing that can be obtained this early in this game is anywhere near as lucrative as Fruit Punch Clown. The downside, of course, is that getting perfect scores in Fruit Punch Clown takes so much time. Throughout all the different minigames in Pizzeria Simulator, the code for all of them is very basic, with most of them being 70 to 80 lines at most, and Fruit Punch Clown is no exception. See, the biggest problem with this minigame is that each child's movement is completely random. At the start of the minigame, each individual child will choose a random direction to start moving in. Once a child picks a direction, they'll then choose one of 3 speeds to move. They can either be stationary, move at 10 pixels per second, or move at 20 pixels per second. Then, once they get close to an edge, they'll turn to face the opposite side. This is happening for each child individually every single second, so you're entirely at the mercy of RNG for how many openings you'll have to catch all 9 children. You could either have to wait 20 minutes or 30 seconds in order to get an opening. If you want a better idea of exactly how long it takes to win, It's Taken actually did some simulations on how often a winnable scenario would come around. Over the course of about an hour, he came up with this data. But a large portion of these windows for a perfect score are only about 1 to 5 frames, which when you're playing for multiple wins in a row, isn't a good idea to go for. In order to make our route work, we're going to need 4 perfect Fruit Punch Clowns out of 7 tries, and this is by far the single most agonizing part of the run. There were so many times where I wanted to go for a scare, and I felt like I could predict a movement, but I ultimately always decided against it because I knew I needed to win 4 out of 7 times, with very little room for error. On average, I'd usually spend about 40 minutes just sitting here waiting for these stupid kids to line up. See, in challenges that I've done before, it's one thing to have a boring start, like in FNAF Lock, where I died so much on Aggressive Nightmare that it made up a disproportionate amount of the total playtime. But at least in Aggressive Nightmare you were doing something. In Fruit Punch Clown, you literally just sit here and wait and wait and wait. Listen guys, sitting here and waiting for hours and hours on stuff like Fruit Punch Clown can be really tiring, so if you want to make this guy here really happy, please consider subscribing. But of course, only if you're enjoying the video. And as you'll see later, it's not like this challenge is a one and done, free one attempt challenge. We're going to be restarting quite a bit. So adding on 40 additional minutes to the attempt counter every single time definitely isn't gonna help. Honestly, I don't really have too many tips for Fruit Punch Clown. Just find some good videos to play in the background and be really patient. There's nothing worse than having the mindset of, oh man, it sure has been a long time since I've had an opening, I should just try and predict one. Then after the 20 minutes that you've been waiting for an opening, you get a 1400. Take your time, try not to fall asleep, and eventually you should be out of the Fruit Punch Clown's hell. Now, depending on how patient you were, you may have enough money left over so that you can start our next big minigame early. But in order to even get there, we have to do some pizzeria upgrades. First, upgrade the pizzeria's floor plan twice. This costs a hefty $12.50, but it's required to unlock the final show stage upgrade. Now, buy the large show stage and the side stage. This will allow us to place down 5 animatronics at the same time, which means that we can now start getting achievements. Now, place down all of the Trash in the Gang characters that we've already bought to immediately get $1,000 in our first achievement. With Trash in the Gang down, the Mediocre Melodies achievement is our next goal, and you would think it would be an easy one to get right afterwards, as they're all in the second catalog. Well, all except for one. I guess Orville thinks he's special or something, because instead of being in Stan's budget tech like the rest of the Mediocre Melodies, he's sitting all the way in the rare finds auction for a whopping $4,100. Maybe this is why he's so much of a pain in UCN, he's just that much more advanced. Orville is pretty much the entire reason that we had to grind Fruit Punch Clown, but at this point you should have enough money to purchase him. After buying the large stage upgrades, you should be right on the cusp of unlocking the rare finds auction. So buy Happy Frog, then if you have enough, purchase Orville. Unfortunately, in all of my runs, I was far too impatient with Fruit Punch Clown to ever have enough to get Orville on Monday, so I had to get the revenue from the night section and salvage first before I could buy him. Speaking of which, we should probably talk about those. The first night section isn't too special, as no animatronics are even in the building yet. Just make sure that you don't buy any PC upgrades. As a general guideline for literally everything, if you don't absolutely need it to finish the game and it won't make you any money in the future, we're not gonna buy it. What's more important are the salvage sections, especially this Molten Freddy salvage, as this 500 right here can determine how many fast tokens we'll have to spend in subsequent nights. All salvages really are is a giant progress bar, with the animatronic that you're salvaging getting more aggressive as the nights go on. In order to win a salvage, you have to play 5 separate audio prompts, and if the animatronic gets too aggressive, you'll need to use your taser on them. However, even though you might want to, you can't just continuously shock the animatronic. There's still money to be made here. If you shock the animatronic more than 3 times, the salvage value is halved, and if you shock any more than that, you'll only get $100 for the salvage, regardless of how much money the animatronic was originally worth. So you want to play the tape for as much as possible while shocking the animatronics as little as possible. Thankfully, the animatronics give many different tells for when they're about to attack, so you know when to shock without wasting your taser. First, each animatronic has 3 separate visual stages that they'll progress through as they get closer to attacking. In order to see these visual stages and to progress between the 5 different audio prompts, you'll have to pull up your maintenance checklist. It is very important to note that you don't have to actually fill out the boxes on the page. In fact, I would encourage you not to, as animatronics will progress faster while you have this page up. For each of the animatronics, their last stage before attacking has a tell that you can use. Molten Freddy will be leaning forward on the desk and cast a large shadow, Scrap Trap will be showing his teeth, Scrap Baby is the most obvious, showing her right eye, and for Lefty, just the right corner of his star will be visible and he'll be looking down at you. These visual cues give a clear idea of where the animatronic is in their progress, and for a casual playthrough, I would suggest immediately shocking whenever you see an animatronic in stage 3. However, we don't want to lose any money whatsoever, so we're going to have to play a little bit riskier. To help visualize this, we're going to have to look at some of the numbers for salvages. So we know that every salvage is essentially one big progress bar, and you might think that the visual change to stage 3 would be close to the kill threshold, but actually it's only the halfway point. The total progress required for an animatronic to kill is 1,200 or 1,000 when pulling down the checklist, and the visual stage changes every 250 progress. So an animatronic can be in stage 3 and still have half of their progress left. However, at 750 progress, every animatronic will begin to play a distinct audio cue. This is when I would recommend using your taser, as now you're a bit closer to the kill threshold. These are pretty quiet, but they're a lot easier to hear if you pause the tape player. Molten Freddy's sound is sort of like a popping, Scrap Traps is a heartbeat, Scrap Babies kind of sounds like some metal scraping, and Lefties is a hissing sound. Don't worry if you have the tape paused for a while if you're trying to listen to these, as the animatronics won't progress unless you have the tape player playing or you have the checklist up. As long as you can listen for audio cues, none of these salvages should give you too much trouble. Once you've salvaged Molten Freddy, we can move on to Tuesday. You won't get very much end of night money on Monday, since our pizzeria is kinda ass right now if I'm being honest. 3 wins in a row. It might honestly be better. 25 bonus revenue. Dude, what kind of roll? So we'll go into how to optimize this section once we have a bit more cash. With Molten Freddy's salvage and the Tuesday sponsorship, you should now have enough money to buy Orville. Now, upon placing down all of the mediocre melodies, we're awarded with a whopping $10,000. But we aren't going to hold on to this $10,000 for long. With the Rare Finds auction open and $10,000 in cold hard cash, it's time to make our biggest investment yet. Now, throughout this video, we haven't really done anything too hard yet. Sure, Fruit Punch Clown is annoying and really forces you to be patient, but it isn't exactly difficult, at least not compared to some of the other stuff that we've done on this channel. So you're probably wondering why this video has taken so long to come out. Well, the biggest moneymaker in this game also happens to be one of the single hardest challenges in the vanilla FNAF games. When you're ready, head into the catalog and purchase Gravity Vortex. Now, a lot of people seem to think that Fruit Punch Clown is the highest source of income in all of Pizzeria Simulator, but this actually isn't the case. Unless you're getting literal 1 in quintillions of odds playing Prize King, playing a perfect Gravity Vortex game will always award you the most Faz rating and cash compared to every other minigame. On average, a win can range from 26k to 29k, so that's about $2.7 thousand every single time that you get a win, whereas Fruit Punch Clown is only getting you about 1.1 thousand and takes so much more time. Now, of course, like with all get-rich-quick schemes, there is a catch.
Do it. You do it.
No, you do it.
Hot to.
You gotta put like an emphasis on it, like tuh, you know?
And that catch is that Gravity Vortex is hard as hell. You could honestly make a case that despite only lasting a minute and 30 seconds, Gravity Vortex is more difficult than all of the base game max modes with the exception of SL 1020 and 5020. And once you start trying to get multiple wins in a row, the difficulty just gets worse and worse. In Gravity Vortex, we play as Helpy in some sort of space pod, and this space pod is not durable whatsoever, as if you get hit even once, Helpy's ship will explode and you will lose the minigame. In Gravity Vortex, we'll have to face off against 4 different kinds of enemies. These are Balloon Boys and their respective heads, JJs, and the final Brow Boy boss. Defeating each of these enemies will award you with a different number of points that will go towards our overall FAS rating. And seeing as that FAS rating is what determines our cash, we want to get as much as possible. Upon first playing Gravity Vortex, you may think the game just randomly spits enemies at you until you've eventually defeated enough to trigger Brow Boy and win the minigame. But in reality, the minigame is actually split up into 5 different stages, and these stages won't progress until you've fully eliminated all of the enemies from the previous stage. Stage 1 is made up of 3 Balloon Boy enemies. Despite being the fodder type of enemy in Gravity Vortex, Balloon Boys are far and away the hardest type of enemy to deal with. They'll shoot projectiles at you constantly and home in on your position, and when given bad spawn RNG, which we will talk about later, trust me, I got some beef with Balloon Boys, they can essentially close you off and force you into unwinnable situations. This is made even worse by their death animation. When a Balloon Boy is destroyed, they split into a bunch of different heads that go flying in every single direction. This would be okay normally, except for the fact that the Balloon Kid heads will fire the same projectiles at you at the same rate. So if you don't take these heads out fast, they'll fill the screen with projectiles and you'll have to use some insane bullet hell skills to find a pathway through. Though in stage 1, with only 3 Balloon Boys, it isn't quite enough to overwhelm you, and you can quickly dispatch these first 3. Phase 2, however, is considerably more difficult, and is actually the most RNG based phase in the entire minigame. Instead of 3 Balloon Boys coming at you, 7 will spawn in quick succession, and if you're not careful, they can very easily overwhelm you. Phase 3 introduces the JJ enemy, with the entire phase just being 1 JJ. JJs will move towards you at a much slower rate than Balloon Boys, and will fire bullets in all directions instead of directly homing in on you. Once a JJ takes enough damage, it will then pop into 3 Balloon Boys. Phase 4 is by far the hardest phase. In this phase, 5 JJs will spawn in one after another, and this is where all of the crazy bullet hell tactics come in. As a matter of fact, every single clip that was in that montage all came from phase 4. If you don't dispatch each JJ enemy as they spawn in, they will overwhelm you insanely fast, and you'll likely get cornered by the sheer amount of BBs that will spawn in as you try to fend off the rest of the JJs. If you somehow made it past phase 4, you'll finally reach Brow Boy in the final stage. Thankfully, even though Brow Boy is meant to be the final boss for the minigame, he is the easiest enemy. He has an insanely slow and telegraphed fire rate, and he'll always spawn in the location that is the furthest away from you. When he pops, he'll award a whopping 10,000 points, then split into 2 JJs. Then, taking out these JJs will finally end the minigame. Now, most players would beat this minigame once, say something along the lines of, "Wow, that was horrible, I never want to do that again," and move on with their life.
That's the most annoying game, and it's so inconsistent. So that's what happens at the end of Gravity Vortex. I would not recommend having that as your main income source, even though you get like 28,000.
But unfortunately, in order to succeed in this challenge, we're going to have to become the best Gravity Vortex players that the FNAF community has ever seen. And I do mean that quite literally. When I first started brainstorming ideas for this challenge, I knew that I was going to have to get good at Gravity Vortex. So I booted it up and began to try and craft some strategies. It took me around 20 attempts to get my first ever win, and I knew that that kind of win rate wasn't going to generate any profit. So somehow, I needed to find a way to drastically increase the consistency of the minigame. The first thing that I noticed, and one of the best tips that I can give, is to know your hitbox and the hitbox of enemies. You may think that the moment a projectile or enemy collides with your ship, you'll lose. But in a moment of mercy when creating this minigame, Scott decided to shrink your hitbox to only be a small square in the dead center of Helpy's pod. This is why stuff like this, and this is possible. Knowing exactly where your true hitbox is super important for when you have to pull off super tight dodges. Even though your hitbox has been decreased, enemy hitboxes are the exact same as their model. If your hitbox gets clipped by even the topmost pixel of a balloon from a Balloon Boy, you will lose. But even with the knowledge of these hitboxes, I still couldn't seem to find a way to get wins consistently. Sure, I could get past the first 3 phases with some sort of consistency, maybe like 40%, but I would just get swarmed so fast in phase 4, and I really couldn't do anything about it. I'd try to target a JJ, pop it, then the BBs from that JJ would usually force me into a corner with no way out. I was thinking that at this point, maybe this challenge wasn't going to be possible after all. I mean, only a few people have ever even beaten Gravity Vortex, and no one on record had even done it twice in a row before. I just needed more space. If I could find a way to get more space in the arena and somehow manipulate the spawns of the JJs, maybe I could get some more consistent wins. So I thought and thought, and eventually an idea came to me. A series of games that I've held near and dear to my heart for nearly 10 years at this point is Call of Duty Zombies. I've never made a video on zombies because honestly, I could never find anything that would be worthwhile to do in it for this channel, but it resurfaced in my mind here. You see, in Call of Duty Zombies, players will often use a method known as training to survive longer into the rounds of the game. Why is it called training, you ask? If you know, you know. In COD Zombies, the zombies will always run directly towards your position. So if you ran around in a circle while dodging the incoming zombies, you could hoard them up, then take them all out as a group much more efficiently. So seeing as the JJs try and track your movement, I was wondering if I could apply this same kind of tactic here, and it turns out this was the first major step in increasing the consistency of Phase 4. Instead of just playing as aggressive as humanly possible and hoping for a good JJ spawn pattern, I'd bomb rush the first JJ and then destroy its BBs. Then I'd let the remaining 4 JJs spawn and begin to loop them. The first loop would often be the most difficult, as the JJs would get a bit desynced and their projectiles could create some tough patterns. But usually, if I was able to get the first loop, I had a good chance of winning the phase. Once I had the JJs looped, I would then lead them into a corner, then fire to pop the frontmost JJ and take out its BBs. Then I'd loop again and repeat until Phase 4 was complete. Now, this strategy wasn't completely foolproof. Sometimes when I was trying to get the first loop, the last JJ would spawn directly where I needed to go and I was pretty much screwed. But it drastically increased the consistency of the wins thus far. So much so that I was able to snag the world record for the most Gravity Vortex wins in a row. 4.
Thought I was new to Gravity Vortex.
Once I felt that I was practiced up with Gravity Vortex and with a world record under my belt, I thought this challenge would be a breeze, but I couldn't have been any more wrong. See, a huge problem that I had with Gravity Vortex was that mentally, practice was much easier than actual in-game runs. When you're just constantly restarting over and over again and not playing for any stakes, it's easy to not feel any pressure, even when going for multiple wins in a row. But when you know the last 50 minutes that you spent staring at Fruit Punch Clown is at stake, if you don't lock in and win some Gravity Vortex games, the pressure can really take a toll on you. And I could see this immediately on Tuesday. Even though I managed to get 4 runs in a row in practice, I was still only able to win 3 out of the 10 runs that I was given for the day. But I figured that this pace was at least still somewhat okay, and that I'd play the run out. Once you've played Gravity Vortex all 10 times on Tuesday, you should have a decent sum of cash left. At this point, you're going to want to buy all of the Rockstar animatronics and place them down for their high entertainment stats. We'll need to buy the Rockstar animatronics later anyway in order to get the Rockstars Assemble achievement, which awards $20,000. However, we don't want to rush the achievement now by buying Lefty. It may be tempting as he's only $5, but we can salvage him for $5,000 later on in the game, and if we purchase him here, we won't be able to salvage him later. At this point, I had a tough call to make. I still had a bit of cash left over, and despite having a stacked animatronic lineup, my pizzeria was still pretty shit. I didn't know if it was a good investment to buy some better attractions for the sake of revenue, or just save as much money as possible by not buying anything. This was still only my first serious attempt at this challenge, so I decided to purchase a bunch of items that would increase my overall atmosphere with the hope that it would eventually lead to more end-of-night money. See, there's a fine line that you want to walk between saving and spending, as you only want to buy items that will give you more return on investment later. Simple business practice. So let's look at what these end-of-night numbers really mean. To start, let's go over how each of the stats influence your total revenue. Atmosphere and entertainment will both influence your visitor count, with your atmosphere being new visitors and your entertainment being returning visitors. The equations to generate the exact visitor count are a bit complicated and are pretty luck-based, so I've just put the average results on here as well. Once the overall visitor count is determined, you then gain revenue based on your amount of visitors. Food revenue is determined purely on your visitor count, while the bonus revenue factors in your revenue stat as well. Unfortunately, the way that we have to buy items in order to optimize our cash kind of makes these stats work against us in the early game. Animatronics provide loads of entertainment but don't provide any atmosphere, and on Monday you're not able to get any returning visitors. Now, the returning visitors won't make logical sense on later nights, as you can get more returning visitors on Tuesday than new visitors that you had on Monday, but you can't get any returning visitors on Monday, if that makes sense. And on Monday, we don't really have anything that would provide any atmosphere. all we really have is the mediocre melodies. And because atmosphere is so important for all of the sources of revenue, we don't pull in too much cash here. But now, on Tuesday, we can factor in entertainment, revenue, and atmosphere. If we heavily generalize all the equations here, 1 point of atmosphere is roughly equal to about $36 at the end of the night. 1 point of entertainment is about equal to $30, and 1 point of revenue is about equal to $94. So if whatever you want to buy isn't going to make up that cost in however many nights you have left, it isn't a worthwhile purchase. For example, let's look at 2 items and see if they're worth purchasing. To show as much contrast as possible, let's look at the paper pals and the confetti tile floor. The paper pals cost a measly $5 and only award 1 atmosphere, whereas the confetti tile floor costs $5,000 and awards 9 atmosphere along with some entertainment and health and safety. Even though the confetti tile floor may look more valuable at first, the paper pals completely obliterate it in the ratio for return on investment. Not only do the paper pals make their own cost back 7 times over in one night, you're able to purchase them super early in the game, so they're going to award more money for more nights than the confetti tile floor. So in general, we're going to be using these guidelines to appraise items by their stats and see if they're worth picking up. But generally speaking, cheaper items are always better. Unfortunately, I was not this smart on my first playthrough, and I made some pretty inefficient impulse buys. Now, after playing through the next night section and salvaging Scrap Trap, Gravity Vortex would once again show how much pressure affected my gameplay when I would go 2 of 10. Thursday was even worse, with only a 1 in 10. After salvaging Lefty and getting the Rockstars Assemble achievement, I was up to 70 grand, which sure, it was good, but it was still extremely far off from our original goal of 1 million. I would go on to go 3 in 10 in Gravity Vortex for Friday, then finally 1 in 10 on Saturday, finishing with a total cash of $93,000 and 10 of 50 Gravity Vortex wins. Which sure, it's not bad for only a week, but it was a far cry from our goal of 1 million. And actually, at this point, I kind of realized that I was a bit in over my head. I calculated that without any kind of glitches or exploits, the best we were going to get was about 215,000. But I didn't want to give up on my dream of becoming a millionaire just yet, because in that moment, something else caught my eye. You see, there's an additional score you get in FNAF 6 aside from your money, and that score is your FAS rating. We may not be able to become a millionaire financially unless we take on some dubious glitchy practices, but we may be able to become a millionaire in the eyes of our corporate overlords with a FAS rating of 1 million. So I set this as the new goal for this challenge. After all, at the end of the day, we're still gonna be a millionaire in something. And the game seems to care about this score system a lot more than your cash, as they even showcase it at the end of the game. I'd still try to get as much cash as possible, as FAS rating and cash go hand in hand, but the main goal was now that sweet 1 million FAS rating. At the end of my $93,000 playthrough, I had made it up to a FAS rating of 578,000. So even with the skill of a Gravity Vortex world record holder, I still wasn't even close to that 1 million mark. There were some optimizations that we could make, but overall, this was going to come down to Gravity Vortex. Outside of playing minigames, the most FAS rating that you can earn from placing down attractions and animatronics is around 23,000, so not even one Gravity Vortex win. At this point, it was clear. I had already gotten the world record for the most wins in a row, but we were going to have to push this minigame so much further. So I went back to grinding, and this time I wasn't going to stop until I had truly mastered this minigame. Within a few minutes of attempts, I had already tied my world record, but I knew that to beat a challenge like this, I was gonna have to go so much further beyond. I wasn't nervous, I didn't feel any mental pressure. All I wanted to do was keep playing and push this record as far as I could possibly take it. At this point, I had reached a level in Gravity Vortex that I hadn't even thought to be possible. With 11 wins in a row on practice and a new high score of 834,000 in-game, I was convinced that I wasn't just gonna beat this challenge, I was gonna smoke it. With that kind of win rate, I could easily blow past 1 million. You see, throughout these practice attempts, I decided to look a lot deeper into how Gravity Vortex actually works. I needed to know how to deal with exactly every case, every phase, and every enemy. So let's see what's actually going on here in this minigame. Though it may be very simple on paper, finding the most consistent strategy in Gravity Vortex took a lot of trial, error, and experimentation. First, let's talk about the RNG. If you're one of the few people who's actually beaten Gravity Vortex, it probably felt like on some runs you got instantly cornered, and in others you were able to easily dispatch every single enemy on screen without too much difficulty. Well, this all comes down to spawn patterns. Remember, earlier in this video I talked about what enemies are contained within each phase, and that will never change from game to game. However, what does change is where these enemies choose to spawn. There are 6 total spawn points throughout the arena, with 2 on each wall in a slightly asymmetrical formation. When enemies choose where to spawn, it's a simple 1 in 6 to go to any of these locations, except for Brow Boy, who will always choose the middle location. Most combinations for these spawn points will be winnable, but sometimes an extremely unlikely combination can either create a completely unwinnable scenario, or a scenario that requires so much locking in to survive that it's unwinnable like half the time. I mentioned earlier how Phase 2 and Phase 4 are the only difficult phases in this minigame, and that's because of how many enemies they throw at you in quick succession. If you combine this with bad spawn RNG, that's what creates situations like this. If I were to go over every kind of instance of bad RNG that can happen in Gravity Vortex, we'd be here for quite a while. So instead, I'd like to highlight some of the worst cases that seem to kill me the most often, and how you can sometimes play around them. The first case that I had to deal with was a Phase 2 pattern where the majority of the later enemies spawn on the lower half of the map. You see, over the course of my Gravity Vortex attempts, my Phase 2 strategy hadn't really changed much. In Phase 2, you can't really do any loops like you can with the JJs in Phase 4 because the BBs just fire and move way too fast. However, because of their limited health, if you can eliminate all of them before you're forced to loop, you can survive the phase. So my general strategy was to start as close as possible to the topmost front spawn point. Then slowly work my way around the left edge of the arena, picking off every BB as I move down. This would end up being very tense near the bottom edge of the screen, as there would normally be 1 or 2 BBs left that I would need to take out just in time to squeeze past and survive the phase. After playing this phase more and more, I came to realize that the BB shots basically formed a barrier between me and the top half of the arena, and that in order to get as consistent as possible with Phase 2, I would need to inch down as slowly as possible as to not give up much ground while I was taking out the BBs. When mastered, I would say this strategy would get me past Phase 2 about 95% of the time. But sometimes, the BBs would just roll insane chances to completely swarm the bottom like in this clip here. That right there was a 1 in 64 for them to all swarm the bottom, and a 1 in 3 for the last BB to be that specific back spawn so that every other BB completely blocks all of my shots, and I end up running out of space and then losing. This not only happened to me a stupid amount of times on earlier runs, but this kind of RNG is way more punishing than anything that can happen in the later phases. If you die in Phase 2, you're getting booted out of Gravity Vortex with around 2,000 points, whereas with bad Phase 4 RNG, you can at least manage to get 6,000 to 7,000. Speaking of bad Phase 4 RNG, let's talk about that. As we've already discussed, Phase 4 is the infamous 5JJ phase, and skill-wise is by far the hardest phase, and also the phase that my strategy has changed the most on. Originally, I would just try and bomb rush the first JJ, loop the other 4, then take them out one by one, but a lot of the time I found myself getting cornered if the JJs decided to take the frontmost spawns. Thankfully, I managed to find a way around this, and that was abusing the knockback. Whenever a JJ is fully within the bounds of the arena, meaning that a single pixel of the JJ isn't touching any of the edges of the screen, they'll take what seems to be a random amount of knockback when they're hit by a bullet. So by tap firing to fire as little bullets as possible, while knocking back the JJs as much as possible, you can push them into a more comfortable position to start your loop. This knockback strategy essentially makes the looping section of Phase 4 entirely skill-based. However, there's one case that makes this phase insanely more difficult, and that is the death block. Now in Phase 4, you always have to rush the first JJ and eliminate it immediately, as looping 5 JJs is very difficult. So during this first bomb rush, on very rare cases, the first JJ can spawn on a corner, then while you're bomb rushing them, the second JJ can spawn in front of you and block the first damaged JJ, leaving you to run out of space and then lose. This only has a 1 out of 18 chance of occurring, and I have been able to survive it a few times, but in my opinion it is by far the worst case of Phase 4 RNG. So with all of this knowledge, here is my complete and optimal Gravity Vortex strategy. For Phase 1, just rush the 3 balloon boys. There isn't enough of them to overwhelm you. Then head up to the top of the arena before phase 2 starts. Then inch around the side until you cleared out all the phase 2 BBs. Now rush the solo JJ in phase 3. Then prepare for phase 4. Once the first JJ in phase 4 spawns, rush it immediately. Take out all of its BBs, then begin knocking back the next JJs until you see an opening on either vertical edge of the arena. Once you have a chance, dash through the opening to begin looping the JJs. Then pop each JJ one by one every time you loop. If you've taken out all of the JJs successfully, you can take on Brow Boy. Simply fire at him and slightly change your vertical position to avoid his insanely slow fire rate, then focus on one of his 2 JJs, loop the last one, then complete the minigame. After hours of practicing Gravity Vortex, I felt that it was finally time to go back into an actual game and finish this challenge. I was pumped up and ready. After all, if I could nail this game 11 times in a row, getting a win rate high enough for 1 million Faz rating shouldn't be too far off. I had approximated from some close failed attempts in the past that I needed around 30 out of 50 wins, so an average of about 6 wins per night. So I booted up FNAF 6 for another 2.5 hour playthrough. But once I was 30 minutes into this playthrough, I soon began to realize the cruel strategy that this game was playing on me. I take proof for my challenges very seriously, and if you go to my second channel, you'll see raw proof videos for pretty much everything that I've done on this channel, all of which are uncut and unedited for the gameplay sections. However, for most challenges, I only need to complete 6, maybe an 8-minute night at most, and that's that. Or for some longer challenges, maybe an hour. We don't talk about that one.
Should I do it again?
No, just sit here and stuff will happen. Something normally happens.
Oh, what happened over there?
We don't talk about that area.
Yeah, don't look at
I
that.
can't help it.
Stop looking at it.
It's beautiful.
Oh, why is it looking at it?
Kind of terrible and wonderful at the same time.
Stop saying stuff like that.
So an average attempt will only last 6 or so minutes. Well, in order to get a proof recording for this challenge, I had to always play the game in one full sitting. Otherwise, I'd have to cut the footage, which is very untrustworthy. Considering that a full game with this strategy was taking me around 2 to 2.5 hours, this was extremely draining, and most of that was due to something you've probably forgotten about by now. With all this focus on Gravity Vortex, remember that the first hour of this game is spent painstakingly waiting for an opportunity in Fruit Punch Clown in order to get enough money to buy Gravity Vortex by night 2. If we don't have enough money from Fruit Punch Clown, we won't get a full 50 attempts, which will drastically reduce the odds of us getting to 1 million by Saturday. No matter how hot I was playing in practice attempts before starting up the game, the entire hour of setup would drain me of all the energy that I had. Then, going into Gravity Vortex, I'd be so tired from just staring at Fruit Punch Clown that I think my reflexes just weren't as good. I also did this challenge during my finals week at college, so that probably wasn't a good choice either, and it definitely wasn't helping with the tired factor. But seriously, listen to the music that plays in the Fruit Punch Clown minigame. You can't tell me this wouldn't put you to sleep instantly.
1990. Spaghetti.
Fruit punch for everyone.
After the setup with Fruit Punch Clown, I was so ready to be over with this challenge. I managed to go 5 out of 10 on Tuesday, which showed that even when fatigued, I could still pull off a consistent win rate. And if I could maintain this kind of pace throughout the entire game, I might be able to barely eke out 1 million. I managed to hit another 5 out of 10 on Wednesday, ending with about 400k Faz rating. Generally, you want to be just above 500k when you reach 5 tokens on Thursday. You have 50 attempts total if you optimally play Fruit Punch Clown. So we want to be halfway to 1 million when we're halfway through our total Faz token supply. So if I could clutch up and get 1 or 2 extra wins in the later half of this challenge, it could be doable. By the end of Thursday, I had managed to hit another 5 out of 10, and I was now sitting at 585,000 with 20 tokens to go. But at this point, the pressure and fatigue was really starting to build. I had been recording for almost an hour and 30 minutes during this attempt, and at this point, I think the game itself started to realize. See, at this point in the challenge, I actually started to personify the game itself. It's not FNAF 6 giving me bad RNG at this point. I could say that it is quite literally the game that is fighting against me. And nothing showed this better than my last 10 attempts on Saturday. I haven't really talked too much about the mental struggles of this challenge so far, and for most challenges that I've done recently, they really weren't all that bad, because again, the night lengths were so short. But I think this challenge, more than any other, is more of a mental battle than a physical one. In competitive sports, you'll often notice momentum swinging in the direction of one player or team. Now, I don't mean momentum in the physics sense, I'm more so referring to how a player begins to gradually gain a lead, they feel like they're unstoppable, and that confidence is what allows them to eventually close out the game. It's a much stronger force than you might think, and anyone who has experience trying to reverse the momentum of a game will tell you that it feels significantly harder than just starting evenly.
I really don't see Tosh beating him. I'm punking controller, dog. I'm punking controller. Forfeit, my he forfeits. He forfeits. He knows he got Mango gave this corporation.
When I'm playing Gravity Vortex for practice with no stakes, I can just continually restart over and over again. So once I gain that momentum, I can carry it to do some pretty insane stuff. But in a normal game, we only get 10 tries per night. Then we have to do an entire night section and a salvage section, which combined last anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes. I even began to notice that during the latter half of each 10 attempt block, I was always doing better, as I had been warmed up and started to gain momentum for that night. But then, the game would completely ice my momentum with the night section and the salvage section. And by the time that I had returned to throw 10 more tokens at Gravity Vortex, I was back at ground zero and had to warm up again. Despite this, I was able to manage a 5 out of 10 win rate on all 4 of the first nights, but eventually the pressure was just too much on Saturday, and I was making mistakes that were entirely skill-based. And the pressure only gets worse when you start to realize that you have to win every single game you have left in a row in order to make $1 million. I was just in my own head too much for my own good, and after recording for 2 hours and 30 minutes, I just folded entirely. Even though I managed a 5 out of 10 win rate on every night before it, I ended Saturday with a 3 out of 10, showing that no matter how good of a start you can get off to, it's not over until it's over. I ended up finishing with a 910,000 FAS rating and $130,000, which is a new high score, and certainly isn't bad, but it's not 1 million. At this point, I had probably sunk a good 10 hours into this challenge total, and if we counted practice hours in Gravity Vortex, I don't even want to know how much I'd spent. And the rage was really starting to build up here. See, if you've been around for a few months or so, you probably remember how hard I would rage back during this summer. Back then, I wasn't at school, so I was just back at my house and I would just yell as loud as I could whenever I got mad. It was pretty funny and made for some good content, honestly. But here, I'm at my college dorm, so unless I want to get kicked out for waking up the entire surrounding block, I just had to stay silent and really take it all in. But after all of this time freaking out at FNAF games, after coming so close, at the end of this 900k fail, I kind of started to realize what my overall weakness was. Alright, because like, this isn't like the FNAF lock where I would like go out on the motorcycle, because FNAF lock is like hard. I mean, this is really hard too. This is an insanely hard challenge. FNAF lock, at least FNAF 3 was somewhat entertaining, a little bit. Like any challenge I've done, except for 6 Hour 420, that'll never be beaten as the worst challenge ever, has always been slightly entertaining to some degree, you know, at some point. And here, what do we have? Gravity Vortex is cool, but the first hour is just sitting there for Fruit Punch Clown. It sucks. It's so bad. I don't know, dude. I mean, I'm gonna play it again. It's like, but I'm just saying this now. If this video is releasing far later than it should, it takes a lot. And I'm gonna go off on a huge tangent here. So if you want to skip to whatever timestamp is on screen, I'm gonna get really deep in this video for no reason. A lot of people like to say that, like, a lot of big content creators on Twitch, I'm gonna call someone out. I'm gonna call Asmongold out. He's so much bigger than me, I don't care. He said that, like, streamers have a harder job, and like content creators like me have a harder job than the 9-to-5 worker, and that is complete bullshit. If you work a normal job, you have a harder job than me. Now, I'm a college student, so I know how it is. I'm doing both, right? So I don't want to seem like I'm a total bitch because I don't work a 9-to-5 job. I'm kind of a bitch for doing this. But I don't want to seem like a total bitch for screaming and saying how bad my experience is with this challenge, how awful it was, because at the end of the day, I'm playing a video game. And like realizing that now, at the end of the day, it's a video game. I'm not fighting to keep my family alive at a 9-to-5 job or some shit. At the end of the day, I'm a content creator, and I'm very privileged to be a content creator. So I'm sorry if this video takes a while. This challenge sucks. I don't want to sit there and play Fruit Punch Clown and just wait and wait and wait and wait and then get like a 1400. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I have to. I have to do it again soon. Like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna play some UCN Deluxe. At the end of the day, it was just a video game. It seems like such a simple solution to not getting angry, but honestly, it was beginning to work. And when I really stepped back and looked at why I was getting angry and feeling pressured, it wasn't because of Gravity Vortex. The sole reason that I felt so much pressure in all of these Gravity Vortex attempts was just because I didn't want to play Fruit Punch Clown. I had so much hatred for this minigame that literally all of the pressure that I felt could be completely erased if there was any other way to set up the cash to purchase Gravity Vortex by night 2. How much does Carnival Hoops give you? I actually need to know. How much does Carnival Hoops give you on a win? 5,000 Faz rating. Do you know what? 5? Holy shit, hold on. It might be skill based now. This could be really big. There has to be an anti-Fruit Punch Clown route. This is the new mission. I'm going to find an anti-Fruit Punch Clown route. I don't give a f. I'm going to find a setup that is anti-Fruit Punch Clown. I don't care how hard it is gameplay wise. I'm going to find a setup that is anti-Fruit Punch Clown. And that gets us. Ooh, the craziest markdown in human history. We still have a chance. Dude! What the f? Oh! Yo! Oh my god! I totally skipped Fruit Punch Clown. Yes! With even a mild markdown, you can totally skip Fruit Punch Clown. Yes! Okay. I hadn't felt such sheer joy in a long time. It turns out that if you get a perfect score on all 3 of the first Midnight Motorist games, and instead of buying Fruit Punch Clown, you buy Carnival Hoops, then get a perfect score in that 8 times in a row, you can skip Fruit Punch Clown and still get 49 tries in Gravity Vortex. I was over the moon. I didn't care how good I needed to get at Gravity Vortex. I didn't care that I needed to perfect Carnival Hoops 8 times in a row just to have a run. Not having to play Fruit Punch Clown meant that I could actually have fun with this challenge. I was even able to optimize this run even further to always have a guaranteed 49 tries total with Gravity Vortex. Remember earlier when we were talking about how the Paper Pals are actually one of the single best items in the entire game? Well, we can use them here in a new anti-Fruit Punch Clown route to eke out just enough money to buy Gravity Vortex the moment Night 2 starts. Once you've played your 3 games of Midnight Motorist and bought and placed Mr. Hippo, Ned Bear, and Pig Patch, buy Carnival Hoops and use the rest of your play tokens on it. As a quick pro tip, you can hold spacebar at the very beginning of Carnival Hoops before the minigame starts to get an extra point. Then, just get in the rhythm of the game and getting that bonus shouldn't be a problem. Once you've spent all of your tokens on Carnival Hoops, you should have $3,900. Now, upgrade the floor, buy the stage upgrade, and get the Trash in the Gang achievement like normal. Typically, we now just play the night section and salvage Molten Freddy. But before you do that, buy the discount cooling unit, the Paper Pals, and the foil party set. These 3 items are extremely cost effective, and the discount cooling unit will completely negate your risk, along with adding some atmosphere. Not only do these items give us 5 atmosphere total going into the night section, but they also provide just enough total cash spent to unlock the rare finds auction. Now head into the night section and play as usual. If you get reasonably lucky with the 5 atmosphere stat, you'll make $800 total when combining the revenue you get from Molten Freddy. Now, accept the sponsorship, play Carnival Hoops one last time, and you'll have enough money to buy Orville. The only problem is that we're now missing Happy Frog to get the achievement, and we need to play a second game of Carnival Hoops to get just enough money to purchase her. But because Orville is from the Rare Finds auction, placing him down awards significantly more Faz rating than the other mediocre melodies, which will get us just enough cash to buy Happy Frog. Then place her down. Now we can get to Gravity Vortex with only 1 extra token spent and no Fruit Punch Clown. This means that from this point on, we can completely avoid Fruit Punch Clown, so long as we're willing to sacrifice 2 to 4 Gravity Vortex attempts. And me personally, I am completely okay with having to get even better at Gravity Vortex if it means never playing that stupid minigame ever again. I also found another quick time save at the very beginning of the game. When you have to listen to the demo salvage sequence with Baby, you can press Ctrl S to mute the game, then click play on the tape player. Oh my god, it's a tape player, it's a reference. Shit, oh shit! Then, because the game is internally muted, the tape player will instantly stop. Then you can unmute the game and Scrap Baby will instantly skip to the end of the scene, which saves a good bit of time.
2, 1.
However, even though my motivation was through the roof, I think the game saw what was going on and wanted to put an end to it. Even though I had found a way to avoid its most painful torture method in Fruit Punch Clown, I just had a feeling the game knew when I was on good runs.
Guys, this is evidence for me being clinically insane. Whoa. The YouTube commenting was like, whoa, you're insane? Wow, I never heard that one before. That's a new one. That's a new joke. It's real original too. I made it myself. See? See? The goblins. They're right fucking there. They're right fucking there. They're behind my desk. They're right fucking there. I swear to God. I swear to God. This shit doesn't happen. They're right fucking there. They're right fucking there. They're right fucking there. They're laughing at me right now. It's a monitor. There's no explanation. None. There's none. There's no explanation. Let's watch this shit right now. I will prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. I'm not crazy. I will prove it to you. Look at this shit. I'm going to run. They're going to give me the best RNG I've ever seen in my entire life. Alright, just run. No stakes. Watch this shit. Stage 4. Doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. Start on stage 4. It doesn't matter. Watch this shit. Bro, 1 for all back spawns. Doesn't matter. They won't shoot because they don't fucking care. See? They shoot in a good pattern. Easy kill. Done. They didn't even shoot. I was on the right. Brow Boy's free anyway. I'll even kill the JJs for Brow Boy, just for some extra insurance. Watch this shit, bro. I even played aggressive, just for fun. You know what? Kill him anyway. See? See? There's literally no explanation. The second I open this click team window and I go to practice, it's fine. The literal moment they know that I'm in the game and there's stakes, it's impossible. There's no explanation. There are goblins in my computer and and 100% real. That's what's been doing it all this time. Honestly, there was no other explanation. I could come so close, have all the momentum in the entire world, but I would always get stopped just short of 1 million. When I would have amazing runs in the early game, the game would always catch up to me. I just needed to find a way to not get in my own head and feel no pressure. So how do you beat a game that takes most players 50 attempts to win once more than 60% of the time? The answer is simple. You don't get hit. In the early days of competitive Smash Melee, a player by the name of Isaiah would take the world by storm in both singles and doubles. And when asked why he was so good, or how he does it, he'd simply respond with "don't get hit." And this was the key. You have to disregard literally every other factor in the game and only see it in one dimension. When you're playing Gravity Vortex, it doesn't matter how many wins in a row you're on. It doesn't matter what kind of pace you're on with overall Faz rating. It doesn't matter if the video is going to get delayed. The only thing that matters is that you don't get hit. So I took those words and started up one last game of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. With a 5 out of 10 on Thursday, I was barely on pace, and because of pressure, I was always known to perform worse on Friday and Saturday. I was going to need an exceptionally high win rate on both, but
I wasn't nervous. At the end of the day, all I had to do was not get hit. That's it. That's it. That's it. Oh, dude. Oh, where's your shit talk now? Oh my god. I see you f***ers in that computer, dude. I see him. I see him behind me. Give me that shitty RNG, you stupid motherfuckers. Oh my god, dude. You came all this way to lose to me, motherfucker. You came from beyond the ice wall to lose to me. Try and give me that double block, 2 blocks in 1 run, and guess what? I fucking beat it. With 2 points of extra credit too. After hours and hours of attempts, I had finally reached the coveted 1 million FAS rating, with an extra $50,000 to spare, and $143,000 in cash. Just looking at the overall Gravity Vortex stats during this run, I'd be surprised if I ever played this good again in my entire life. Now at this point, I had accepted every ad, salvaged every animatronic, and also never bought any of the upgrades. So I ended this playthrough by doing Saturday with all ads, no tools, no upgrades, and all salvages for the hardest Saturday. I also went back later to buy every attraction in the catalog and get the last achievement so we can purchase the Pickle for a new stat of 1 happiness. Now you already know I had to do Hardest Saturday to finish it off, and compared to the hell that we just went through, Hardest Saturday was stupid easy and I beat it on the first try. After listening to Henry's speech and watching everyone burn alive, I was finally free from this challenge. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for your time. People like you are what keeps this channel going. I'm sorry this video took a lot longer than expected. The original mentality behind this video was, oh, 1 million FAS rating in FNAF 6, that's gonna be free, I can do this during my finals week. And then yeah, it wasn't free at all. Also, I do want to say quick before I end the video, I saw a piece of fan art from user Mangolin on Discord that was an actual edit of my Bones character, and this is like the coolest thing ever. I can't play the music in it because of YouTube copyright, but dude, like seeing a Bones edit is genuinely a dream come true. So trust me, any kind of fan art is welcome. This is so awesome, dude. Anyways, thanks for waiting for this one. I had a lot of fun making it. As always, thank you for watching. Peace.